May meeting of the Development Regulation Committee, again held in the chamber. We're live streaming the meeting on YouTube, and a recording of the meeting will also be available afterwards. As a result of this, if one of the clerks gets up to move the camera, please do not be concerned. This is simply to ensure everyone is visible on the stream. We're also audio broadcasting the meeting. Again, a recording will be available on the council website. We're not expecting a fire drill this morning, so if the alarm should sound, please follow officers out the doors to the side of the rooms, down the stairs in the foyer into the Duke Street, where you will make your way to the location assembly in the grounds of the cathedral opposite. We'll now go to the agenda itself. We go item 1, membership apologies and substitutions and declarations of interest. Yasmin.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have one apology today, Councillor Steptoe, for whom Councillor Ian Grandy is substituting. Thank you.
Thank you. I will take this opportunity to welcome Councillor Nat Bowes to the committee, and we see Councillor Grandy still with us. I'm sure he will be a regular member of the committee, as he's now a name substitute. So thank you very much and welcome to the committee. Agenda item 2 is the minutes. Do I sign them as a true records? And we go to agenda item 3, public speakers. Do we have any today?
Thank you, Chairman. No, we don't have any public speakers today.
Agenda item 4, mineral and waste. 4.1, Birch Pit, Malden Road in Birch. This is in the hands of Mr. Teddy Burns.
Breaking down here, isn't it? Okay. Right, folks, Birch Quarry Plan application. So you've got an addendum for this one, 2 paragraphs which I've just revised the MPPF, National Planning Policy Framework, with some updated comments. So the addendum, you've got it in front of you. I'm not going to go through it. It's just changing 2 paragraphs around. And the main one is Appendix J, where I've just substituted one of the plans, which was a previous plan dated March 2020, for one dated April 2020. Other than that, there's nothing untowards on that. So Birch Quarry Pit. This is an application we had in. It was submitted in December 2018. So as you can see, we've turned this one around really quickly, and it's before you now anyway. So the application is to vary a condition on the site, principally to enable a revised working and restoration scheme and have an additional time period in which to achieve site restoration. First slide, thank you. So this is just a quick planning boundary of the Birch Pit. Go on to the next one. That's just in context to where we are. It's just southwest of Colchester Quarry in Stanway, and just to the southeast of Birch village itself. So on this particular plan, which we're looking at, if you can just see it, the quarry is quite large. In 1995, when this original application was submitted and made, it was for a 25-year operation for 11 million tonnes of sand and gravel to be extracted at 450,000 tonnes per annum. The original quarry was way back in the 1940s. Today, if you can imagine, that's just the colour scheme for where we're looking at. The site boundary, because it's a variation of planning condition, reflects the original permission way back in 1992, 1995 when it was approved. So the blue area to your right has now been restored, and the active area of the quarry that we're actually looking at, I'll fire the red pointer if we can just see. So it's really everything to the left of my red line. So that's the yellow, the light green, and the light blue is the active area of the quarry. And that's what we've been concerned about today. You can just jump to the next one. So this is aerial shot with my red line planning boundary overlaid on top, so you can actually see what was originally on the colour scheme on the previous plan. So to the right, we have the restored land, which now comprises 2 lake areas, agricultural land, and recently in the last few years, there's been a large solar panel farm which has gone up on that piece of land. So that part of the quarry is out of statutory aftercare, as you are aware from your training programme, and you'll have, after this committee as well, further training on restoration. The aftercare is for 5 years on mineral sites, and that was imposed as part of the Minerals Planning Act in 1981. But we'll go into that in more greater detail. It's not really relevant for this application. So the boundary, which is the current extraction boundary where they're working, is on the left-hand side, the western half. I've indicated in red a little dotted line. If you can quickly jump to the next slide, please. That's just a topographical view of that plan that you just seen. So they have their silt lagoons in place. They're creating part of the water body, which will be ready for restoration, landscaping afterwards. But they've actually started to dig now up into the western area. If you can wing back to the last one. And that's the current boundary. We have what's called the Bunny's Years. That was the original northern boundary of the quarry. In about a number of years back, the early 2000s, the company came back and they revised the northern boundary to this line along there, principally because the overburden was too deep and it wasn't economical to work the mineral. So if we jump forward, please, slide 6, that's it. Under the existing minerals local plan, you may be aware that a southern extension to Birch Quarry is in the plan as a potential future allocation site. That's land which could be suitable for future mineral extraction, but no planning application has yet come through. The current minerals local plan, as you're aware, runs through until 2029. Next slide. So on this particular slide, this was the restoration plan stroke landscaping, which was originally approved. The area that we're looking at and is pertinent to this application are the Bunny's Years and the pond on the left-hand side. It was going to go back to a pond, as you can see, extended up into the Bunny's Years with a few titivations around with the bays for the lake, etc. Go to the next one. Subsequent restoration schemes which have come through, taken out the Bunny's Years, the northern boundary, which you saw in one of the earlier plans, and a rather nondescript roundish lake with agricultural land surrounding it. The existing quarry processing plant is in this neck of the world. The existing quarry stockpiling area is in that area. The lagoon, which I mentioned, the silt lagoon, is down in this corner here, and they're currently working in this part of the feature. So when this application came in, not yet please, when this application came in December 2018, the original planning approval was for the land to be finished working in December 2018 and restoration of the land by December 2019. So the current application before us, as I just mentioned earlier, is to extend the time period for a further 10 years to allow mineral extraction of the remaining 2.3 million tonnes at a rate of around 215 to 315,000 tonnes per annum, which would take them up to the 10 years, 2029 working the site as of the December 2018 date. When the application came in, it allowed us to reconsider as a variation of conditional application. And looking at the application in more detail, it was found that, if you go to the next one, that certain landscape features had not really been picked up in the original application way back in 1992. In particular, this hedgerow here with a number of mature trees. And if you go to the next slide, this is just an angled shot. There's the hedgerow, mature tree, and the other little hedgerow. So this feature, plus the southern part of this wooded copse, where a lane track runs through, had not actually been picked up either by the applicant at the time, nor in further consultations as the application went through the process. So as part of the consideration of this application, it was considered by ourselves, Landscape Ecology and Mineral Planning Authority, in looking at that, yeah, these trees and hedgerows have had 10 plus years to mature. They could have been worked out had the company stuck to the original timescale and restored the land way back in 2019. That these trees and hedgerows are still on the site, increased in maturity value, insignificant in terms of landscape and visual impact, then it was considered that a case could be made for retention of those trees. Hence the reason, one of the reasons why this application has taken quite a long time to be considered. There's been numerous meetings with the company, and our landscape and ecology from Place Services have been involved quite thoroughly on this site, and including the arboriculturalist officer as well, looking at these veteran trees. We'll go on to the next slide. This is just a southern view looking north, and there's the mature trees. They're mostly oaks, the hedgerow, and that's the copse in the background. The excavations, as you can see, are now trundling up the left-hand side or the western side, and the remaining mineral is really in this neck of the world, which is what the company are wanting to win. On to the next slide. That's looking southwards. There's the mature oak tree standing proud, and its line of buddies living in the hedgerow dogtails. So as part of the discussions that we had with the company, they came up with 3 working scenarios. Scenario 1, 2, and 3. And the areas that we're looking at is the copse and this neck of the world where the hedgerow and the trees would have been. So under scenario 1, the hedgerow would have gone and the lake and the steep margins would be created. Next slide. Thank you. Scenario 2, half the hedgerow. So the dog leg is gone, but the mature oaks and the little tree would be in that neck of the world. And the next slide. Full hedgerow with, there's our little oak tree, and the full line and that northern hedgerow on a peninsula would be retained. Just for interest, there's the bunny's ears to the north, and the lake would be slightly redesigned. We still have scrapes for reeds, nature conservation, habitats, etc., and agricultural land would still be retained, including acid neutral grassland and various other bits of grassland on the clay, on the stocking area and the plant processing area. In the appendices to this report, C, D, E, are the Place Services responses, which I've put in detail so you could actually appreciate how this has developed to the stage that we're currently at for planning committee. And in the appendices, you've also got the 3 scenario plans, which are included. So the recommendation on the application overall is to approve the operations. If you can go on to the next slide of this. This would be the revised working plan. It would allow them to work up phase 5, but then they would switch and attack the hedgerow with the oak trees from this neck of the world to allow them to work around and create the peninsula, shape the lake, and allow the retention of the hedgerow and the tree. That would entail some sterilisation of mineral, about 105,000 tons or whatever is in the report. In terms of our land bank, I've gone into that, and it's minuscule, we could live with it. And I think for the sake of retaining the landscape features, it's a price that we could willingly live with. The companies still have the minerals to work. The other aspect of this application, right through from the pre-application, the screening, early discussions, we were not too happy that a further 10 years was coming in to extend this particular site when it should have been finished 10 years ago, kind of thing, 2018. So through the application documents, I've gone into it in a bit more detail, and I've come up with the recommendation that they could actually work this neck of the world within 4 years and restore the land at the same time. So were they given planning approval today, they would have the 5 years in which to complete mineral working and restoration. It wouldn't be the 10 years that they wanted. Hey ho, we go to 2027, which is still close enough, but bearing in mind where we are and the mineral working has been taking such a long time to work through on this particular site for various reasons. And I put that into the committee report. Mineral is poor quality. The sales has been long-winded. The processing plant is a bit old. It's probably a quarry out on their limb, so probably not too much emphasis has been put into promoting this site and getting it done and dusted. Hence the reason we are where we are. We still have mineral on the site. Would another number of years actually matter on this site? It would be nice if they were worked properly, and you members have had experience of this previously with sites coming up for extensions of time. I've tried to reduce this one as best we can. The win-win situation is we get the hedgerow and the trees, okay, so they get a bit more time to win their minerals, but I've tried to reduce it down to the 5 years. The company have indicated they may have to come back later on for a future extension of time. We can flag it up that this report, the members who are having this discussion can consider that we don't like extensions of time being delayed on this particular site. So if they do come forward, we have this to fall back on and say, we told you so. So it's really for them to get their fingers out, get the site worked, restore it back. Whether the land to the south comes forward within the current iteration of the Minerals Local Plan, we are yet to see. They have said that they would like to overlap this site with the working of the southern extension within this plan period, 2029. At the moment, we've got no indication of whether they're going to go for that land to the south. If that does come through, then we may have to consider the potential for working that land to the south, possibly through the existing processing plant on this particular quarry. But that's another story for another committee report in the future. So the recommendation on this site, folks, is to approve, subject to the time periods I've mentioned, running with scenario 3 and the revised working plan. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Graves.
Thanks, Terry. Sorry, if I can just jump in there, members. We found out late this week that the Colchester Borough Council's local plan part 2 has had its inspector's report with a recommendation or that it's been considered sound, but Colchester have yet to adopt that plan. It doesn't materially alter the recommendation in the report because there's still weight to be added to the policy that Terry mentions in his report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graves, for your contribution. And thank you, Terry, for your presentation. Members, I did mention if anyone has any declaration of interest. No one indicated, so I presume that nobody's got anything to declare. Thank you very much. Councillor Jowers.
The only interest I suspect is that I was sort of heavily involved with the local plan. It is in fact going to be confirmed, I think, on the 3rd of June. Well, I'm assuming it will be confirmed. I'd be very, very surprised if it weren't. And at that stage, of course, it's considered as the weight you put on the emerging plan is it's there. So I don't think that really should concern us.
Very much hope so, because we're tied with Colchester and tendering, so not funny business there. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I totally agree with Councillor Jowers, of course. For me, the land bank was important. I saw it seems to be such that the allowable numbers of lorries in and out per day is nowhere near been the total that's been allowed. So that means there's been underutilized, which is probably why we're here today, I'm guessing, because if the foot upon the accelerator all those years, it would have been a lot further along than now. The question I've got, Chair, really is a sensible one. I think, in my opinion, as a common sense man, about supply and demand. If lots of councils around the country with lots more housing being built in local plans, etc., if that increases, would the firm be able to cope with extra than the 20 or 30 they're doing now? And they've got 131 in, 131 out, as I understand it, but they're nowhere near that. Would they be able to cope with that demand to make sure they supply the people that want to do these buildings.
Thank you, Councillor. I think, as I mentioned before, and this in the committee report, the quality of this mineral is probably not that great, hence the reason it's been sitting on site for a number of years, and ultimately it's down to their estates and their salespeople to sell the product. You get quarries like Colchester Quarry up the road where it's winging out, but then you go in terms of housing, etc. They want certain types of mineral, certain types of concrete. Whether Birch can actually supply that, again, down to those guys getting out there selling their product. At the end of the day, in answer to the other question, they've not indicated to us that they wanted to increase HGV movements over and above what they've got planning approval for. That they've actually, as you picked up, dragged their feet on this particular site and only worked it for about half the production says a lot. It's a commercial decision, not a planning decision.
Well, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I know this bit, and I think it was a very good report from Mr. Burns, but they're a big company, Hanson, and they are commercially very agile, and they know exactly what they're doing. So in a sense, I think it's a good balanced decision is to give them the 5 years. Interesting that there is no one here. You know, you need to bear that in mind in that they will be coming in the emerging minerals local plan for Southside. And, you know, I suspect that from their point of view, they would see this as being pretty reasonable. The mention of it being a commercial decision, of course, if and when we start three-laning the A12 and the A120 comes in, then actually lower value mineral would be in much higher demand. And I think, you know, we need to perhaps, as Hanson's are doing, is look ahead. I don't think, you know, from my point of view, it's not a difficult decision. I think that's pretty good. It's a pretty good compromise. A little bit concerned about that sort of sandy peninsula, how oak trees and hedges will survive on it, because it's going to be pretty well drained. But we've got to take the chance, haven't we? So I actually think it's a very sound recommendation, and I would support the decision that Mr. Burns has put forward, and I would therefore propose recommendation.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Councillor Jowers. I got Councillor. I don't think. Do you have any comments? No, Councillor Garnett. Oh, you have. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Jowers has picked up some of the points that I was a little bit concerned about was the trees. And yeah, when you get it, I'm not saying it literally is stuck on an island and it's drained. Yeah. Terry, get your hands off the mic. The only other thing I was going to mention, does it affect our supply under the minerals plan? I don't know what it's all called. So if we're losing some several million tonnes or 7,000 tonnes, is it going to affect our supply? Is it 7 years we have to have a supply? Something like that.
I think you're referring to the amount of minerals which is going to be sterilised. Is that what you're referring at? Yeah. Mr. Greaves.
Terry's addressed this in his report around the land bank, and it would have a negligible impact upon the county's land bank. However, we are currently reviewing our minerals local plan, and without getting into too much detail, the sales that have been ongoing for the last 10 years have never reached the amount we've planned for, the apportionment amount. So there is some flexibility long term that we plan for within there, and we feel we're relatively comfortable. The land bank will still be over 7 years, as is recommended in planning policy.
No, that's fine, and I'm quite happy to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Garnett. I don't see any other hands. I don't have any further speakers. So the applications have moved and seconded with inclusion of the addendum minor changes on the page 28, 29. All those in favour, please show. I think it looks like fairly unanimous. Yasmin, would you like to confirm?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I can confirm that was unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed, members, and Terry for the presentation. We now go to agenda item 5, information item 5.1 is the enforcement report. And as you will all be aware, we had a very, very good training session by George, who gave it to us, Mr. Stockdale. And it is proposed at this early stage to do similar thing once a year with matching pictures with all the various stats in the report, which is very helpful for members to understand what the characteristics of the various sites is. I'll hand over to George, Mr. Stockdale, see if anything else you'd like to add to that.
Thank you, Chairman. This is going to be the first report that includes cases that are also closed. So it gives a bit of background to what else has been going on in the area. And the only other comment would be that the dates on the report compared to the stats are a bit different just because of the cut-off date of one runs to the end of March and one runs to the end of April. And I'm happy to take any questions afterwards about any cases or anything. Thank you.
Members, any points anyone would like to raise? Councillor Basflin.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask the officer if it's possible to keep me informed of what's going on at Straits Mill, as I get a lot of flack because of the location of that and what's been going on there. So if there is any things of noticeable stuff, if you could just let me know, that would be really grateful. And just thank you personally again for his presentation at the training. It was excellent. Thank you. And for all the hard work you do solo. Thank you.
Our lone worker, Mr. Stockdale. I hope the cabinet member is listening to this. And I don't see any other hands from anybody. George, thank you very much indeed for your report. We go to 5.2 stats, and we see the 100% showing on both of them. I think George touched on the discrepancy. There's 32 live enforcement cases because one was closed at the end of April. Members, I don't have any other business except for the date of the next meeting, which is going to be, to write it down, 24th of June. I thank you all for your attendance today, and I wish you all a very good weekend. Please do stay on for the closed session that Mr. Burns is going to deliver. Is going to talking, as he's already hinted, on restoration. So if you like to have a comfort break, we'll